Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about relationships in astrology and looking at the two natal charts. Now, really, I think the problem is when people try to decipher relationships and with astrology, sometimes they'll just look superficially and they'll look at one or two aspects, or they look at just simply by the two signs in question, which might be the ascendant, sun or moon, and they'll say, well, this looks really good, we must really be compatible. Well, not necessarily, because as many of you know in my videos, when I'm talking about things pertaining to one's natal chart, I mean, I emphasize, at the end of the video, that don't isolate anything in the horoscope, and that applies to synastry and relationships and as far as astrology goes. And what's really essential to remember is not to just look at one aspect, but look at many and look at the whole picture in the chart. And well, for example, we can look at, I think what's important is to look at the personal planets and look at the aspects between the two persons' charts from the personal planets. And you want to, when you evaluate and assess the compatibility, you want to look at all of them, and if an aspect involves at least one personal planet, it could be very important, especially with the sun, moon, ascendant, Venus, and Mars. Mars is the sexual nature, and Venus is love in general. And the thing about it is this: you could even have, let's say, you have a lot of negative aspects between you and your prospective or potential love mate or what have you. But what could modify this is, say for example, that your Venus, say, is conjunct the other person's ascendant or vice versa. Now this could modify things considerably, because this person may feel amorous with the person that has the conjunction with Venus with. Or let's say, for example, that a person's sun falls in your 5th house of romance. And let's say the sun inconjuncts your ascendant. Well, that could be, and that's an adverse aspect, yes, but the fact that it falls in your 5th house will modify things, because you're going to feel happy, perhaps, and enamored with this person to some degree, and when this person is around, you might feel those, I guess we could say, that a little love sensation or a connection between you and that person. So it just, astrology, whether it's a natal chart or you're looking at synastry and compatibility, it could be very intricate and complex. And what I would recommend, I mean, if you can go online, you can find something that will give at least a compatibility report, a free one. I think there may be something at Cafe Astrology. I don't know if don't think they go into a plethora of aspects, but they go into some where you can get some general idea or conception of the compatibility between you and that prospective love match. So those are some things to look at. And remember, there's something that I wanted to touch up on and incorporate into this. Now, we look at astrology and relationships, and a lot of times, okay, we'll look at the 7th house cusp and see what sign is on there, and if somebody's sun falls on it or their ascendant falls on that 7th house cusp, and as far as having a romantic sexual relationship, we could say, oh, that looks good. But it could be, but all other aspects need to be evaluated more with the ones that involve at least one personal planet and the ascendant. Now, and you could even consider the midheaven something important, but the midheaven is more connected with, like, I mean, that's more career matters and public image. You can look at that if you want. If you have positive aspects from that person's chart to your midheaven or MC, it might really show that this person can be supportive of perhaps your career ambitions, aspirations, and be auspicious as far as attaining maybe things matters with your career and livelihood and public image perhaps. But there's also something else that I admittingly have recently learned. It's something called Juno, and I believe that's it's something that's not a planet, but people often look at that and say, well, couldn't this play an integral role in compatibility, maybe in a horoscope? And they say it could represent maybe the prototypical partner for us. Well, here's where we run into a problem, because now I'm not saying that this isn't what Juno is supposed to symbolize or represent, but let me give you, let's say, a hypothetical example. Let's say that Juno is in Aries, right? Is in the sign Aries in your chart. And let's say that your sun sign, ascendant, or moon is in Cancer. Well, by sign, this would be incompatible. I don't see how you could say, well, Aries would be the typical match for me. Could it be maybe that what it comes down to is, as far as the Juno sign, it could represent the qualities and characteristics that maybe we could look for in a potential or prospective romantic partner, such as fortitude, courage, speaking one's mind, being outspoken. Maybe those are just the qualities that we're looking for in someone, but not necessarily in Aries, sun, moon, or ascendant. So those are some things to look at when you're deciphering these things with planetary aspects between you and a prospective other. So that's really some things to look at and consider when you're evaluating compatibility between one and another in relationships in astrology. Now, the thing about it too is that just because in some instances you might see incompatibility by sign, you still might be able to work them out in some instances. And let me give you an example. Let's say somebody has an out of sign, let's say it's a sextile, for example. And let's say, for example, that you have somebody with an Aries ascendant and a Taurus ascendant. And let's say the aspect makes a sextile, even though it's out of sign. Now let's take, say, somebody at early Aries and somebody with a late Taurus degree. Well, if it makes a sextile, it could indicate that these people can work out the discrepancies or disparities between the two signs. Aries can be very impatient and wants to get things done, is always quick to start projects, and they have many going on simultaneously. While Taurus is a little bit more methodical and plotting, but what could happen is perhaps the Aries might help encourage the Taurus person to initiate projects a little bit quicker and do it in a way that's not too forceful or overbearing. And perhaps the Taurus person might slow the Aries down, and they might be able to find that happy medium. All right, let's take another example. We do another Aries. Let's say, okay, Aries and Cancer can be incompatible by sign, right? But let's take somebody that, let's say they have an out of sign sextile. Let's say that somebody has the sun in Aries in a late degree, and somebody has the sun, moon, or ascendant in Cancer in an early degree, forming a sextile. Well, this could be similar to the Aries-Taurus example I gave you before. Well, somebody that has, let's say, Aries in a late degree, and the person has the early Cancer zodiac sign, well, the Cancer person may be able to have the Aries slow down a little bit and focus on home life a little bit more than otherwise indicated, and be able, in the Aries might appreciate these nurturing, sensitive qualities and the attention that way that the Cancer person gives him or her. But on the other side of the coin, that the Cancer person, the Aries person may be able to help get the Cancer person out of his or her shell a little bit more, and thus maybe have the Cancer person encourage the Cancer, him or her, to be more gregarious and outgoing and get the person to come out more, for example. And they might be able to find some harmony in this. But don't get me wrong, by sign, it's still adverse. But if you have a positive aspect, such as a sextile between the two in isolated cases, this could modify, at least in my opinion, the negativity that would be connected with the two signs as far as compatibility goes. So those are some things to look at as far as relationships go in astrology. So those are obviously the things to consider. So the thing is, and there's also something else I saw fairly recently, in the dark Lilith was something where I guess we could call it true Lilith, is something where I saw something one time between that and Pluto, when I was looking at the aspect for that with Pluto and Lilith, and somebody had a conjunction with those two. It said that there might be some real strong sexual connection with those with the Lilith and Pluto. So there are some things you could look at. You could look at some asteroids. I look at Chiron in Lilith. You could also look at the North Node as well. In Juno, as I described before, is a little bit kind of iffy. You can look at it. I understand the belief in that, is that that's supposed to represent the prototypical partner for us, but you can kind of evaluate yourself and you can decide on that. Well, anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for astrology and relationships, and stay tuned next time, where I'll be dissertating and talking about continuing my series on the zodiac signs on the house cusps in the natal chart. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.